Welcome back to Plot Munchers. Today, we're plunging into No Way Up, a gripping underwater survival thriller directed by Claudio Fay. Packed with tension and high-stakes action, this film is a roller coaster of emotions that will leave you breathless. Spoilers ahead, so tread carefully. Brandon's day began like any other, but little did he know it would soon turn into a harrowing battle for survival. Waking up late with a sense of unease, he rushed through his morning routine, grabbed a quick bite, and dashed to the airport. What awaited him would push him to his absolute limits. At the airport, Brandon reunited with his friends, Kyle and Jed. Jed was accompanied by his girlfriend, Ava, who had insisted on bringing Brandon, her family's bodyguard, along for the trip. While Jed and Kyle shared jokes and lighthearted banter, Ava's frustrations simmered beneath the surface. Her family's overbearing involvement in her life was causing tension within the group. Despite the underlying friction, they boarded the plane, the air thick with unspoken tension. Once in the air, the flight crew, led by Danilo, kept the mood upbeat as the plane soared into the sky. Brandon found himself seated next to Ava, who seemed more preoccupied with her career dilemmas than the journey itself. Though the group's dynamics were subtly shifting, no one could have foreseen the catastrophe that was about to unfold. The flight started smoothly, but disaster struck when a flock of birds collided with one of the engines at cruising altitude, causing a sudden loss of power. The plane jolted violently, and panic erupted as passengers realized something was terribly wrong. Rosa, a young girl seated by the window, spotted the damaged engine and alerted the crew, sending shockwaves of fear through the cabin. As the plane began its rapid descent, it became clear that a crash was inevitable. What had been a peaceful journey quickly turned into a nightmare. Passengers screamed in terror as the plane hurtled toward the ocean. In a heart-stopping moment, the aircraft slammed into the water, the impact throwing survivors into the sea amidst the wreckage. Gasping for air, they struggled to stay afloat in the chaotic aftermath. Injured and disoriented, the survivors fought to stay alive. Brandon, with a shard of metal embedded in his chest, battled to keep his composure. Kyle suffered a broken hand, while Danilo, ever the composed leader, tried to rally the group. But with the plane sinking and the water rising, their odds of survival were dwindling by the second. The tail section of the plane remained partially afloat, and the survivors clung to it, unsure of what to do next. Marty and his granddaughter, Rosa, held on to each other for comfort while the others grappled with their injuries and fear. Brandon, sensing the gravity of their situation, urged everyone to stay calm, believing that rescue was imminent. But as hours passed and no help arrived, their hope began to fade. The endless expanse of the ocean and the distant wreckage only deepened their despair. Just when they thought things couldn't get worse, a new threat emerged. Sharks. The blood from the crash victims attracted the predators, and the survivors soon realized they were no longer safe. Sharks circled ominously, and the group knew they had to act fast or risk becoming prey. Despite his grave injuries, Brandon made a daring decision to dive underwater and retrieve an oxygen tank from a deceased passenger. As he swam beneath the wreckage, a shark attacked, tearing into his body. Brandon fought back with everything he had, managing to escape its jaws and bring the oxygen tank to the surface. But his injuries were severe, and blood stained the water around him. As he returned to the group, he collapsed, urging Ava to stay away. "Stay strong," he whispered before being dragged under by the shark, leaving the group to mourn his tragic loss. As the plane continued to sink, the survivors faced the grim reality that their chances of survival were slipping away. The water was rising, and rescue still hadn't arrived. Ava, determined to keep hope alive, reassured the others that they would make it. But with sharks closing in, they had no choice but to act quickly. Jed, badly injured and barely able to stay afloat, clung to his sister Ava, while Kyle, paralyzed by fear, struggled to swim despite his earlier attempts at learning. With morale at an all-time low, Ava refused to let them give up. She urged everyone to stay calm and focus on finding a way out. In a glimmer of hope, Ava spotted scuba gear nearby, equipment that could provide them with vital oxygen underwater. She decided to dive again, desperate to find anything that could aid their survival. But tragedy struck once more. In his desperation, Jed was attacked by another shark, which tore off his leg. Despite their efforts to save him, Jed bled out in the water, leaving the group further shattered. Now reduced to just a handful of survivors, the group realized their only option was to swim for safety. Ava took charge, gathering their remaining resources and preparing the group for the perilous journey to the surface. But as they moved, the plane's structure began to collapse, forcing them to act swiftly. With sharks circling and time running out, the survivors knew they had to risk everything. They braced themselves for the treacherous swim through open water, clinging to the faint hope of rescue. But as the plane sank beneath the waves, it became clear that they were on their own. Just as their strength was nearly gone and the sea seemed an endless hostile void, they heard the distant sound of rescue helicopters. Though faint, it reignited the hope they had almost lost. The survivors endured the grueling ordeal, fighting their way through the water to safety. When they were finally rescued, they were battered, bruised, and forever scarred by the horrors they had faced. But in the end, only the strongest survived. The crash had taken its toll, but it had also revealed the extraordinary resilience and courage of those who refused to give up. Ava, Kyle, and Rosa emerged as the final survivors, their lives forever changed by the crash and their fight for survival. The memories of their lost friends would remain with them always, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Before we go further, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Plot Munchers for more edge-of-your-seat stories. Hit that bell icon to stay in the loop with our latest uploads. Your support means the world to us.